Good morning, good afternoon, not quite sure, but welcome. My name is Erik van Veenendaal, and I have a 10-15 minutes of fame, if you want, talking about, of course, AI, the great new technology, but also what it means for software testing, and perhaps also, I would say, putting things into perspective and reflecting on AI and software testing. Let's go. When we're doing AI, of course, this is great, this is new technology, and we're all enthusiastic. And to some extent, I recognize things what happened when we had test automation the first time. But being a tester, I also think about, so how do we ensure we have quality? And here are some things that came to my mind in preparing this presentation, and probably some things to take into account when you're listening to the presentations today. The first one is data. If you want to use AI for, let's say, risk-based testing, or for estimations, or predicting defect density or things like that, then of course you can use the data from, let's say, the world, but much better is when you use your own data. The question is, do you have historical data to make that exercise reliable? And of course, if you have your own data, then your estimations become much better, then your risk-based testing becomes better. However, if you have your own data and also feed it to, let's say, chat, what about privacy? Because this is an issue, of course. In Holland, we see that all government agencies are not allowed to use Gen AI because of that reason. I know there are some solutions, but I don't think they are today almost at the level that we would like to see. So privacy is also an issue. Consider that, please. Think about data. Do we have data to make the exercise reliable? Maturity. I'm doing a lot of assessments for test organizations, and I see that many test organizations are still struggling. They don't really understand test design. They don't have risk-based testing. They don't whatever. And if you don't understand these processes, if you start using AI to do that, how can you validate? So I think you have to look into it and say, how far am I today? What are the things I've mastered? And the things I've mastered, perhaps I can start using AI for those. If you start using things, doing AI, on parts where you're less familiar with, there is a risk, let's put it that way. Complexity. Over the years, and I've been testing for many, many years, I think we have seen a growing complexity. Testing is becoming much more complex. We're testing bigger systems, their interfaces, and things like that. And if you're doing more complex things and ask AI to help you, then of course the proposal from AI is also more complex. And then my question is, are you capable of validating the solution proposed? Which brings us to, let's say, the fifth one on this list, which is trust. And trust has many different dimensions. It's about trust for, let's say, the end user. If you are testing, can they trust that it's been tested well? Trust means if you are using AI, do you trust AI? And we all know, at least I hope we all know, at least in this room, that AI makes defects. If he doesn't know, or she doesn't know, I don't know which one, he or she will make something up. It also means that if you're testing AI systems, you're looking at false positives or false negatives, and have different metrics like precision or accuracy. And in the end, I always say, well, there's the complexity. It's about trust. But in the end, the question is, do you feel, as a user, as a tester, you can take responsibility for the answers provided by AI? You think this is good enough? I assure this has the quality level I would like to be in. So there are things, if you want, that I think consider and think about. Think about data. Do we have data? Or using external data, is that good enough? Can we use our data? Privacy. Do we understand the things that we're using AI for? Very complex. And that means something for the output of AI. Trust to our community, to ourselves, different way of testing. And ultimately, do you feel you can take responsibility? That's your question. This brings me to a model that I've been using for many, many years already, for automation, for basically for every new technology. It's called the PPT framework. And PPT stands for People, Process, and Technology. It's a framework, comes from the business domain, from many years ago already, saying if you want to change something, if you want to change a way of working, and I think this is what we're doing with AI today. If you want to change something, there are always three things that matter. And they have to be, let's say, in balance. We need people to understand testing. We need people to be able to validate the solutions proposed by AI. And of course, I thought something on the agenda as well. ISTQB could play a role here. Having certified testers, not just foundation, but advanced and very experienced testers. And yes, then AI becomes the technology together with test automation. They make things happen. They make it more efficient, perhaps also more effective. Without people, it's going to be pretty hard to know whether the solution proposed is correct. And finally, the third angle, process. Do we as an organization understand what risk-based testing means? Do we as an organization understand how to do performance testing? Do we as an organization understand how to do test design? Is these three together? And again, the balance may differ depending on the technology, but you need all three to be successful. People, technology, being in this case AI, and also having defined processes for that. Now, it may seem that I'm a bit too negative about AI, and I don't want to be that. I'm very positive. I think we're only seeing the beginning of a new era. And there are some great presentations coming up, or have been, I don't know, that also talk about how to use AI. And I have one slide showing what I always say if you want to begin with AI. These are the most easy things to begin, but yet important. And we talk about test analysis always. Test analysis is a part of the testing bowl, where you are given user stories, requirements, design documents, coding even, and you're asked, can you please analyze this? Meaning, can you please review this and look for defects? Well, if you have a process for that in your organization, if you have rules defined, if you've done it before, if you can give him some examples, this is great to do with AI. Just feed him the stories, feed him your rule set, and say, please have a go. And you get the output in 2 minutes. It saves a lot of time. And if you're able to judge, to evaluate that, test analysis works. And the same goes for test design. And many, many years, I think we've been teaching people like occurrence partitioning, boundary value analysis, classification trees. I don't know which test design techniques. Many organizations are not using them or have not been using them. In fact, AI is an opportunity. Because you can tell them, here's a spec. Please use occurrence partitioning and give them information about this. This is the way I want to use it. Here's a template I'm typically using for that. And please generate my test cases using whatever technique. In this example of this slide, occurrence partitioning. And you can give them actually great stuff. You get something back. But again, you as a tester need to be able to validate that this indeed is something correct. So you need to understand occurrence partitioning yourself. Typically also you have domain knowledge. You say, oh, I want to have an additional test case here or there. But it will save you enormous amount of time, first of all. And secondly, finally we can start implementing test design techniques. So these are, to me, simple steps that everyone can start using. Well, not today because you're at the conference, but at least tomorrow. And last one, this is just more like almost like a joke, but still, you see companies selling sample exam questions for ICQB or for TMI or for REP. Hey, this is again something. Feed him sample questions from the standard and say, please give me more questions on chapter 2 for K2 or whatever. Great way to use it, and of course another one for AI, if you might say. Bringing me to my last slide. I've survived case tooling as a tester. I have survived test automation. I'm still there. I've survived Agile. Because people at Agile were saying no more testers. I've survived so far DevOps. So for me, I will survive AI. I don't think AI is going to take away the testers. I don't think AI will take your job in this sense. However, it does mean we would like experienced testers who are able to validate things. We want experienced testers that have AI knowledge and skills and actually can use AI. So yes, AI will change the world. Will it take your job? I don't think so. But it does give you extra challenges to do your job correctly. And the last one probably comes from the PPT framework, but also I think something to consider when looking at AI. If you don't know what you're doing, don't do it with AI. If you've never done risk-based testing, if you've never done risk assessment, and then say, oh, now I've got AI, now I can do it, it doesn't make much sense. First, understand the process, have the skills as a person to do it, and then let AI help you to make it more effective and efficient. Thank you very much for listening. I wish you a very, very nice day with hopefully, or I'm sure, many good presentations, and maybe some of the things I've been talking about can be used in these presentations as a sort of reflection, looking at things, let's say, critically. Do we have the skills? Do we have the process? What about complexity? What about data? What about maturity? Thank you very much.